All right, let's see what we got here. Trump turns up about assassination attempts. Here we go. We're gonna start this.
Welcome back to Special Report in Abu Dhabi, the UAE.
Special
with
Report
President
Abu
Donald J.
Dhabi.
Trump. Putin doesn't go to Turkey.
Yeah.
You thought about going if he was going.
Well, I had a problem. I mean, I consider the Middle East very important. And I had a problem because Thursday I was going to be UAE, okay? And which is where I am now. We're going to be leaving in a few hours and have another couple of stops. It's a pretty grueling schedule. A lot of people said, how the hell do you do it?
By the way, how the hell do you do it?
I don't know. I think it's genetics. It's good genetics. I had a father who was very strong, and I had a mother who was very strong. They lived to ripe old ages, and they were great people. And it's meeting after meeting. And not only that, it's speech after speech. It's not like big ones. Like last night, if you look, he got up and made a beautiful speech. Mohammed, he got up and made a beautiful speech. I wasn't told I even had a speech to make. So I had to make a speech off the cuff. Do you think Biden could do that? I don't think so. Actually, it was a pretty good speech, too. I looked at it. It was pretty good. I didn't know I was doing it. So, but, you know, it's meeting after meeting with the highest level people. These are great people. They love us again. They were not feeling love at all. They were going to China. They're not going to China anymore.
You were going to go to Turkey. Putin doesn't show. Zelensky shows.
What do you think? No, I was never scheduled to go.
No, you weren't scheduled, but you were talking about maybe you would go if it all came together.
But I tell you what,
so what do you think?
I would not have wanted to disappoint UAE because that was my stop. Deal. And if I went to Turkey, I couldn't go here, and it would have been. It would have been very hard for me to say I'm not doing it.
On the substance, what do you think is going through Putin's mind? You said get to the table. You said stop bombing. He hasn't stopped bombing. He's not at the table. And what do you think is happening?
Well, he is at the table, and he wanted this meeting. And I always felt there can't be a meeting without me because I don't think a deal is going to get through. There's a lot of hatred on both sides. I have a very good relationship with Putin. I think we'll make a deal. We have to get together, and I think we'll probably schedule it because I'm tired of having other people go and meet and everything else. And with that being said, I think Steve Witkoff has done an incredible job. But it's a very tough job, and it's a job that, because of position, that I think I'm the only one that's going to be able to do that one. And I think we'll do it fast, too. I think Putin is tired of this whole thing. He's not looking good, and he wants to look good. Don't forget, this was supposed to end in 1 week. And if he didn't get stuck in the mud with his army tanks all over the place, they would have been in Kiev in about 5 hours. And who gave the javelins? Do you remember who gave the javelins? Was it Barack Hussein Obama? No, it was Donald Trump gave the javelins.
Do you think your perception of it has changed? Is Putin now the obstacle to peace in your mind?
Look, I had a real rough session with Zelensky because I didn't like what he said. And he was not making it easy. And I always said he doesn't have the cards. And he doesn't have the cards. And, you know, I'm being honest. He doesn't have the cards. You're dealing with a massive army, and you're dealing with somebody that's brave, that had great equipment.
But I haven't seen you get personal. On True Social, you said, Vladimir, stop. He hasn't stopped. And you had once said that maybe you need to look at other things like sanctions or banking.
Okay, so
because
well, I mean, we've already sanctioned him.
And I'll be doing that.
Russia's already been sanctioned so many times.
Outside of the money, which is a big deal, but the money is the money. The money we can make up. I can make up the money on one trip like this. Okay.
Right. I mean, how many times are you gonna fucking sanction them? You got to stop the war. That's all. Let's just stop the conflict. Stop the fucking bloodshed, right? That's all you can do.
Trip, I made.
They're both hemorrhaging.
12 times the money that we're talking about. I made that money in a few days. I've always been good with money.
It's not about the money. It's about pressuring Putin, right? I mean,
no. But I've always been good with money. I make money. I made in 4 days. I made 12 times what we spent in Ukraine. So the money is the money. What bothered me, I hated to see the way it was, you know, excuse me, pissed away. I hated to see that checks were sent for $60 billion. Every time Zelensky, I think he's the greatest salesman in the world, far better than me. Zelensky, he comes to Washington, he walks out with $100 billion every time he came, $100 billion, $100 billion. Now his abilities were shrinking because the last time he only got $60 billion. But Congress is very upset about it. You know, they're saying, where is all this money going?
But I'm focused on
we
Putin.
send checks. We don't only send we send just checks. We sent just cash. Where is it? The Europeans have been very badly hurt by this. They spent a lot of money also. They spent $100 billion. We spent $350. It shouldn't be that. It should have been the other way around. But
are you going to put the
they have
screws
not
to
been
Putin?
treated. Wait, they have not been treated right by anybody. This is a war that they're, you know, spending a lot of money on. We've been treated worse than them because we had a very stupid person as a president. And if I can solve that problem, and it's a bad problem, because I will tell you, Putin, it was the apple of his eye. He never would have done it if I were president. Never, ever would have done it. 100%. I think you even, most people, actually even Democrats say that it wouldn't have happened. But we inherited a mess, okay? I think it's going to get solved. But you know that Putin wanted the whole thing. He didn't want a piece. He didn't want a chunk. He wanted the whole thing. Somebody said, well, what do we get out of it in terms of, let's say, Ukraine?
Right.
You know what they get out of it? A large portion of the country.
It's just, there's Senator Lindsey Graham has 73 co-sponsors on this bill to sanction Russian oil and anybody who buys Russian oil. He's making the pitch for the bill saying, why should China get the benefit of cheap oil from Russia as Putin continues the war? At some point, there has to be leverage on Putin. And I assume that you've talked about that.
Nobody uses leverage better than me. Look what I did to Iran. Look
So
what I
it's
did.
changing.
It's not changing. I always said that. I would
There's
use
always
that
been
if I have
sanctions.
to.
What are you
I'd rather not
talking
use
about?
that. By the way, that's a big deal. I just
Have people forgotten that
It's secondary
Russia's still
sanctions,
being
it's called.
sanctioned as we
And
speak?
I just did it with Venezuela.
And you
What
could do
is
it with
this?
Iran, too.
I just did it with Iran.
Did
It's
they just like
basically, if
blip
you
that
buy
out of their
oil
fucking memory?
from Iran, you can't do business
They
with
get
the
the
United
fucking
States. And you see the ships just
FBI
leaving the
flash,
port.
right?
You
It's
know,
like,
in
Jesus.
Venezuela, it was amazing.
But why
Chinese
not do it
ships.
with Russia?
You had to see the. Well, I will if I do. I honestly, I will. If we're not going to make a deal, we're going to see whether or not this is Turkey time. You know, this is now
This
we're
is Turkey
talking
time.
Turkey, and we'll see what happens. That would be crushing for Russia because they're having a hard time now with the economy. Oil prices are low. You know.
It would change the dynamic.
Okay, so but he's incompetent. He doesn't want to see the war because, you know, it's everything he said was wrong. The way he talked about Putin, the way he said the threats, I mean, it's just wrong. But here's what was really wrong. He let oil go from $65 to $100 a barrel. Putin was making a fortune. Now I have oil down, so nobody's making a fortune anymore. And it's going to go down further because I'm baby drilled, you know. He closed up everything, and then he opened it. You know, what people don't realize, they said, oh, no, he closed it up, and it drove oil through the roof. And then he said, go back to Trump, go back to Trump. In other words, go back to what I was doing. And he didn't, but they did to a large extent. He didn't go all the way. And I would have been double that by that time, but he didn't go all the way. And what happened, he forced the prices up, the oil prices up, and that Putin made a fortune during that period of time.
Yeah. Did you see this thing with the former FBI director, James Comey?
I did. I just saw it on the news.
You know, he puts up this post showing 8647 in the sand, saying cool shell formation on a beach walk. Your director of national intelligence was asked about it last night, and she said this.
Whatever James Comey intent, he and people like him need to be held to account according to the law, which is something that he
is this about
claims
the
to have given his
is
life
this
for and
about
stands
the
by the rule of
trans
law.
person that
Fantastic.
fucking lashed
The rule
out
of law
at
says people like him who issue direct
Nancy
threats
Mace?
against the President of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
Oh yeah, this
I do.
shit's a Comey too. Yep.
Do you?
So
Here's the Comey one.
I saw that this morning. You know, there's a big time gap. And he knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If
A
you're
child knows.
the
Damn.
FBI director, you don't know what that meant. That meant assassination. And It says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he doesn't.
Well, he
wasn't calling
apologized
for
'cause he was hit.
violence. But
look, he's a very bad.
what do you want to see happen?
What
What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. I have Cash, I have Pam, I have great people. And I'm going to let them, because if I tell you something, they'll say, oh, I'm not going to get involved. But I will say this, I think it's a terrible thing. And when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop.
dirty cop.
And if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency. But I'm going to let them make that decision. But he knew exactly what it said.
It's a dangerous time. I see
Holy
security
shit,
around here.
there's
It's
the
very tight. You're in the Middle East.
We've
had
special
two
counsel
assassination
interview. It's
attempts.
5
One,
hours
obviously,
long?
where you got
What
hit
the
by that
fuck?
bullet in Butler. There's a lot of frustration that we still don't know about that shooter in Butler. And we don't know
Day
about his
one.
communications. We get stonewalled all the time asking questions about it. Is there frustration on your part? Will we get transparency? Will we know the bottom line story?
It's very interesting because we have great people. I think Pam is incredible. I think Cash is incredible. And they're doing a great job. They're being recognized as doing a great job. I was given an explanation early on, you know, sort of a little bit pre them. And I thought it was strange. You know, the one guy had 18 cell phones. Okay. I have a lot of cell phones, but I have like 2. You know, I call that a lot. And I think I probably make more calls than him. It's like, that's all I do. And I had to, why does somebody have 18? Another one, the first one, the one from Butler, he had 3 apps, very unusual apps, and 2 of them were foreign apps. And then he ends up with a white shoe lawyer, meaning a super lawyer from Pittsburgh, you know, the big city. And they live outside of Butler in a little place. Where did they get this lawyer that would represent IBM and would represent ExxonMobil?
But you're the president. Can't you find out?
No, I know. I'm relying on my people to tell me what it is. You know, we have deep-seated craziness in this country. And I'm relying on my people, and so far they're good, but so far and in this case it's Secret Service, they tell me it's fine. But it's a little hard to believe, to be honest with you, okay? It's a little bit hard to believe as I get that throbbing feeling.
Yeah.
I get a little throbbing feeling.
Well, if you find out, we'd love to know. We continue to ask.
I know. No, I
and a lot of
understand
people
what
ask us.
It's a little bit strange. We have incredible people in there now, so can't blame
Well,
that.
you've been very generous with your time. I'll just wrap it up with this. This is, in the minds of Democrats, Republicans, a very successful trip, big picture. Because it's this way, do you want to do more foreign policy trips? Do you want to go talk to China's Xi Jinping? I mean, you're a force of personality as far as getting things done on a business front. Do you think that that's the model that you're going to have going forward?
Yeah. So, well, it's a very hard model. It's a very taxing model. You know, when you do this. So when you say, "Do you want?" Is it fun?
Yeah.
Now, I did say I was standing next to all 3 of them over the last few days, and you know, with tremendous fanfare and everyone going crazy and everything else. It's at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Honestly, nobody's ever. I'm getting calls back in the United States. We've never seen anything like this. It's so good for our country, so I'll do it again, and I'll do it. And yeah, I would certainly China where it's important. That's important in a different way.
China.
This was very important to keep in our fold. You know, it's just they're in our fold. They are back loving the United States again. That was a full embrace, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. I mean, seriously, I asked, have you ever done this before? Last night, 2 nights ago, I said, have you ever done anything for No. Would you? No. Not even close. You know, with the hundreds of camels and the horses and this, it was beautiful. I mean, all 3 All three. If you said which was the best, I couldn't tell you, and they were different. They were all at the top level. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It was an honor. But that really, to me, it showed love. It showed, there's a love. It's almost like they were shut out for a long time, just shut out and treated horribly, and they shouldn't have been. And all of a sudden, they were allowed back in, and they give you an embrace that's 20 times what it perhaps should be. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing to see. So we're in great shape. The Middle East is great. Now, we have one problem in the Middle East, Iran, and I'll get that problem solved. It's going to get solved one way or the other.
Hamas and Israel, that's eventually going to get solved,
that's a big
too.
problem. I think Iran is right now the big problem. That's also a problem. Hamas is big, and we want to take care of the people. Look, people are starving. You see what's going on right now. People are starving. One of the things that one of the three great leaders that I saw 2 nights ago said to me, please help the people, the Palestinians. I said, other than the obvious, what do you mean by that? He said, they're starving. And he meant it with his heart. They're starving. So I've already started working on that.
Are you saying there's a famine again?
It's a deep problem, but we'll get it solved. And a very immediate and a very big problem is, I'm so proud of what we were able to do with India and with Pakistan.
Assad!
Well,
Assad!
it's a potential problem
Where you at, buddy?
like that we have here. I'll get it solved, and one way or the
Where's
other, I'll get it solved.
your
It's either
grade
gonna be
A
done
journalistic
nicely or it's going to be done
news?
violently. And I 99.9% want to do it nicely if we can.
Well, Mr. President, we appreciate the time. Safe travels home. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brett. Good job.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
Have it. All right. And then we have this one.
Thanks for the time. Welcome back to Abu Dhabi, Mr. President. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much.
First of all, congrats on becoming a grandfather for the
Yes,
11th time.
Most importantly.
Tiffany, baby Alexander.
They're a really good couple, great couple, I think. And the baby is perfect. I'll let you know about it in 21 years. But the baby is good, so we're happy about that. I look forward to seeing the baby.
Seeing you with those grandkids. This is a big trip. This is seen, especially in this region, as a major, major success with the interaction between each one of these countries. How do you see it today as you wrap it up?
Excuse me.
Well, I always considered it to be a very important region. I know all three leaders, as you could see, very well. In all three cases, I knew them long before I ran for politics, which is sort of something. It makes it a little bit more special. They're great people. The three of them, they're great people. And it's a great region, but it was never treated properly, and it was certainly not treated well by Biden, who didn't know he was alive, frankly, so, you can understand that. But he was not, they didn't treat this group well. And I think they were being, and I guess because you've reported on it, they were being coaxed very strongly by China, because that solves China's fuel problem forever.
Uh-oh.
And it wasn't their preference, but they were on their way. They were going to China, and that was going to be their parent. And that's not happening anymore.
Do you think you've shifted the paradigm on that?
No, I don't think. I know. We are
Mouse
we're closer now to them than ever before. You could see the relationship. You could get a body expert and pay them a lot of money, and they could tell you. There's just a relationship that I have with all three that's just, very extraordinary. I was even saying, we're like so friendly. Not a normal situation where you're okay with a leader or whatever. But this is a very important region. This is the energy capital of the world. They have, massive amounts of energy and other things. They've invested wisely. And they're looking to do other things. I guess in Saudi Arabia, they said in another couple of years, there'll be more than 50% other businesses represent more than 50% of the take. And it's pretty amazing what all of them have done.
You have a massive amount of business investment coming back to the U.S.
Right.
And they're still adding it up
Which,
in
by the
each
way,
country.
most importantly, that's why I came here. I didn't come here to say, gee, you guys are rich and you have a lot of oil. You know, they have a lot of money, and I want them to spend the money in the United States. And we set records. There's never been a trip like this by any president or anybody ever before. And I'd ask them, how about doubling it up? Okay. Oh, I should have asked for more, because they said, okay. They're good people, and they love our country. And look, they have great danger because of Iran. That's their primary danger. And that makes them vulnerable.
I think I'm entitled.
But I don't see them as being vulnerable, because I think we have the greatest military in the world. And we're adding to it now.
No one
at
can
levels that
handle the
nobody's ever
truth.
seen. We're going to build the Iron Dome. We deserve an Iron Dome. You know, see, we call it two names. So I was going to call it the Iron Dome because that's the name everyone has heard of for years. But to me, it was old-fashioned. So we changed it recently to the Golden Dome, the beautiful Golden Dome.
Golden Dome.
Matches the
Ronald
golden
Reagan,
age.
you know, Ronald Reagan wanted that many years ago, and he was right, except you didn't have anywhere near the technology.
I want to talk about Israel. I mean, the first trip in the first administration, when you came over
Donald's
to the Middle East,
wild
you did do a stop,
golden
in Israel on the way
ride.
back. Not doing it this time. Obviously, the Israel-Hamas and what's happening in Gaza is driving a lot. How do you see that? Are you frustrated at all with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, look, he's got a tough situation. You have to remember there was an October 7th that everyone forgets. It was one of the most violent days in the history of the world, not the Middle East, the world, when you look at the tapes. And the tapes are there for everyone to see. So he has that problem. That problem should have never happened. Now, if I were president, that problem wouldn't have happened because Iran had no money. They were stone cold broke, and they weren't giving money to Hamas. In fact, I remember in your show, like a year before that, you were saying, there's no money for Hezbollah, Hamas. There's like 28 different groups.
The Houthis?
The Houthis. But they have 28 groups that we know of, and none of them. They were all breaking up because there was no money. And then Biden came along, he took off all the sanctions on Iran. I mean, I put sanctions that were so strong. Anybody that did business with Iran could not do business with the United States. So everybody took a pass, including China. Biden came in, he just let everyone go by, and they became, you know, they have over $300 billion today.
So how do you get to a solution there?
Oh, we'll get 100%.
You think so?
Well, we're going to have a solution one way or the other. It's either going to be violent or not violent. And I
wonder what happened to that
prefer
TikTok.
nonviolent. I know so many Iranians from New York, from Washington, from different places. These are great people. You know, you have to view them as people. And I don't want it to be a violent thing, but they're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
But you said it was close the other day. You said it was close to a deal.
I think it's close. I think,
so does that mean that they're going to
make
enrich at any level, like a civilian level?
No, I think they want to make a deal. You know, you say to yourself, they have massive oil, by the way. They have oil that lasts for 300 years. They have a lot of oil. People don't realize they're one of the biggest in the world. And it's very good oil, meaning it's pure, perfect stuff. They don't have to, you know, spend a fortune on gases and energy in order to melt the rock and everything. They have pure, unadulterated, good oil. And you say, why does somebody that has that kind of oil, other than being politically correct, but when you have unlimited amounts of oil and gas, why are you putting up, you know, why do you need civil nuclear? I just don't see it.
But I mean, are you going to call for it all
And
to
I
be
think nuclear is
dismantled?
fine. I think nuclear is fine for civil if you have a country with no oil. But if you're sitting on one of the largest piles of oil in the world, why are you talking about putting up nuclear civil? I call it nuclear civil.
And so Bibi Netanyahu is not convinced that a deal would be good for the region. Is that fair to say?
I think I can say that Bibi, he's an angry man, and he should be because of October 7th. And he's been hurt badly by that, but in another way he's been sort of helped because I think he's fought hard and bravely.
And you think the Israel-Hamas, the situation in Gaza is going to come to an end soon?
Gaza's a nasty place. It's been that way for years. I think it should become a free zone. You know, freedom. I call it a freedom zone. It should become a freedom zone. It doesn't work. Every 10 years they go back. They have Hamas. They have everybody's being killed all over the place. I mean, you ever see? You talk about crime stats. It's a nasty place.
Are these people, these countries that you were just visiting, are they going to have to be a part of the solution?
Well, they would be. They would be. I spoke to all three of them. They would absolutely be. I mean, they're really rich and really, really, really even more than rich. They're good people, and they would help. And so money's not even the problem.
Well, you got to get countries to say yes, to take them.
Look, these are people that want to be in the Middle East. They really want to be in the Middle East. They love the Middle East. I see that. There's a spirit for the Middle East. They didn't have to go to Sweden, Germany, these different countries. They could have been home in the Middle East if somebody had the brains to build beautiful communities. You know, 1.9 million is a lot of people, but it's not a lot of people, relatively.
You know, you had a couple of foreign policy successes even right before this trip. You picked up the phone and called 2 nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, and you got them to step back from the brink. That was a success as you got on the plane heading over here.
A bigger success than I'll ever be given credit for. Those are major nuclear powers. Those are not like a little bit. And they were angry. And the next phase was probably, did you see where it was tit for tat. And it was getting deeper and more, I mean, more missiles. Everyone was stronger, to a point where the next one's going to be, you know what, the N-word. You know what the N-word is, right?
Nuclear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
I figured you'd want to clean that up. No, it's the N-word. That's a very nasty word.
That's
right?
it.
In a lot of ways. The N-word used in a nuclear sense, that's the worst thing that can happen. And I think they were very close. The hatred was great. And
there it is.
I said,
the nuclear.
We're going to do a lot of trade. Don't forget,
Nuclear
Iran wants to
fallout.
make
Come
a deal
on,
with
that's
us,
what everybody wants,
badly
right?
For a lot of reasons. But when you look
Is
at India,
Mr. Hassan
they
Piker,
are calling.
Mr.
Iran
Hassan
wants to
Didi
trade with
Hamas,
us, okay, if you can believe
Osama
that.
bin
And I'm
Laden
okay with
Piker.
it. I'm using trade to settle scores.
Same with
make
Mr.
peace.
Asmongold. It would make his
I've
day to
told
make content on
Iran,
it, right?
We make a deal. You're going to be
Right?
you're going to be very happy.
Same with everyone on the internet.
But more than anything, I've told Iran very
That's
simply.
what everyone
'cause I heard
wants,
somebody
right?
making
Blood
my
sports.
case last night on television.
They want
I
bloodshed,
didn't like it.
yes? I mean,
Because
everyone's
they're saying
hands is already
there's plenty
bloody.
of time, but there's
Why
not plenty
not?
of time.
Why not just take it all the
There's not
way? Come
plenty of
on.
time.
You feel urgency.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and eventually they'll have a nuclear weapon, and then the discussion becomes a much different one. But,
other foreign
but in the
policy-
case of India, India wants, you know, they're one of the highest taxed or tariff nations in the world. They make it almost impossible to do business. Do you know that they're willing to cut 100% of their tariffs for the United States
Is
because
that
of
deal
what I
coming
did?
soon?
Yeah, that'll come soon. I'm in no rush. Look, everybody wants to make a deal with us.
So South Korea.
South Korea wants to make a deal with
India,
us, everybody. But I'm not
Japan.
going to make deals with everybody. I'm just going to set the limit. I'll make some deals, and then I'm just gonna, because you can't meet with that many people. I've got 150 countries that want to make deals. You know, you have a lot of countries.
The market was really happy with the China situation and the sit down
They were.
With
And you
the
know
Treasury
what?
Secretary.
stop
If I didn't do
Sorry.
that deal, if I didn't do that deal with China, I think China would have broken apart.
Not us, them.
We weren't going to break. We're not going to break. They would have broken apart. You know, our country has a lot of spirit. And you know why? Because of November 5th. Because our country has spirit again.
The other foreign policy shift was this embrace of Syria. You met with the Syrian president, who has a shady past of being tied to Al-Qaeda and the al-Nusra Front in Syria, but you see promise there.
Well, before I talk about that, just one word.
Yeah.
Also Pakistan. Great conversations with Pakistan. You know, we can't forget them. And because it does take two to tango. And
That was the
with
latest news.
India, I felt very
ABS
certain.
says it's sending bomb
And with
technicians to the side of the
Pakistan,
car
I
explosion
also
that
talked
rocked
about trade.
Palm
Oh, they would
Springs.
love to trade. They would love to
they
trade.
got
You know,
bomb
they're
techs.
brilliant people. They make incredible
What kind of
products.
explosives were used?
And we don't do much trading with them, and yet I have a good relationship with. I have a good relationship with a lot of people that you wouldn't believe. But I stopped that war. That was going to be a nuclear war, I think, or close, very close. You were right there.
Yeah.
And now everyone's happy. In fact, I told my people, call them up. Let's start trading immediately, because I'm a man of my word. Now, when you get to Syria, so I did something with Syria because the future king, and you have a wonderful king right now. He's an older man. He's also a friend
I heard
of
about
mine.
that.
And he's 100%
Yeah, I called
sharp. He's
that.
great.
I called her.
And he's got a great son.
I said some
Crown
shit
Prince.
about her
And
too.
there's actually many titles. He's prime minister,
Hey,
he's crown
man,
prince.
she fucking started
And he's
it.
doing a great job running it. But he called me and he
Dumb
spoke to me.
bitch.
And he said, could you do
I
me
mean, she's like a
favor? Could
Taylor
you-
Lorenz,
and do
right?
the
They
world a
fucking
favor? Could
cry
you take
wolf
the
and they get
sanctions
fucking
off
called
Syria?
out
Because
so hard.
the only
Fuck
way
those
they're going to have a
people.
chance, the sanctions are
They can dig themselves their own
crippling, really
graves,
bad.
right?
Well, that's what I
Fuck
did
them.
with Iran, and they came
I
to
mean,
a
they
point
already
where
have, right?
They were bust.
They
take the
dug
sanctions
their
off? I hadn't thought
graves
about it
and they
much.
can't do anything
And he
about
said it in a way that was, he's got a great heart. He said, they can't make it with those sanctions. I said, let's give him a chance. I met the leader. I met the new leader, and handsome guy, by the way, young, handsome. And I said, you have quite a past. Got a tough past. But when you think about it, are you going to put a choir boy in that position? I don't think so. It's going to be a little bit tough. It's a tough part of the
So you're willing
world.
to give him a shot?
You know the word they say, it's a nasty neighborhood. It's a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I thought he was really, I thought he was terrific. He was so thankful about the sanctions because he knew he's not going to be able to bust through.
So maybe it'll be
Legal
a
nip
turn
that
there.
will
We'll
leave
see.
you
I think he
in
has a real
prison.
chance. He's
Oh,
a strong
shut
guy.
the fuck up.
He's done some
legal
pretty
eagle.
tough things.
A lot of the coverage here was about your
Pussy
speech
ass
in Saudi
bitch.
Arabia
Yeah.
and some of
Hang
those things that
yourself.
you said about trusting these countries to make their own decisions, and we're not trying to make it a mirror image of ourselves. Big foreign policy
we
thoughts.
have our own problems.
Yeah. But a lot of the coverage back home was about this donation of the Qatar Boeing jet. And I've heard you talk about it.
Until you bring this up now, I haven't heard about it for 3 days.
I know, but I'm just telling you
we
back
can talk
home.
about it again. You ready?
Briefly.
You ready?
No, I heard all the answers.
Well, no, but your audience has to hear the answers. Yeah.
They're giving it to the Defense Department.
To be very simple.
Yeah.
They're giving it to the United States Air Force / Defense Department of the United States. They're not giving it to me. I made a good deal. We need a plane for a couple of years before we get the other ones because Boeing is very late. Boeing is sadly.
Did you talk to the CEO while
I
you were?
did. I said, let's get, in the meantime, I got them 160 planes to build. I said, how about the
Qatar.
2 that you're supposed to build for our country? Now, they are different. They're extremely complex, and I'm not going to go into it, but they're not like a normal plane. It's not like building a 747 normal.
We could put people on the moon before
But let me tell you,
the Boeing Air Force One is
People
done.
knew I was angry at Boeing. A lot of people know. These people know. They're very smart down here. And they suggested if we can do anything at all to help. Because we have 40-year-old planes right now. Our Air Force One is actually 2 planes. It's 2 747s.
I don't think people know that. 40 years. It's 4 decades old, the current Air
They're
Force
40
One.
years old. They're more than that. I think they're 42 now. I've been saying 40 for 2 years.
These planes
They're
are
42.
old.
We shouldn't have a 42-year-old plane. And you know what? There's nothing unsafe about it. In many cases, they're just as safe or more safe. They're heavier. They throw out a lot more for the environmentalists out there.
These were
They throw out a
created
little
back,
more
or
than
well, the
a
first
modern
the
engine
first
would throw
schematics
out.
were
But
made.
they're
and
good, but they're
first
42
ones were
years
created.
old. And when
in
we
40,
landed, I
right,
saw
42
the other day,
years
when we
ago, and
landed,
then they kept
I was
refurbishing
parked
them.
We parked right next to the 747 of Qatar. And we parked next, there was another 747, 2 or 3 of them, which the Arab world has. And when you look at a new 747 and you look at a plane
what
that's
was it? It was
42
like
years old, not even the same
85%
plane.
of the planes are
The
owned
other
by
ones
like
are
what?
bigger and sleeker,
5
and sharper,
companies or
and
some
and
shit like
it doesn't
that?
look right. We have a problem with Boeing. Now, again, it's a very complex plane. It's a much different plane than a normal plane would be. Okay. And they're doing a great job. They're coming back, and they're coming back strong. But I'm angry about them for the
Right,
2
they
planes.
own,
They
like,
should be able
basically
to knock
all
them off
the
in no time, and
airports
it's, they're
and
not
whatnot.
able to do that. And
Because they supply the
said,
airport
great job
commercial
to me.
planes and
he said, I
sometimes
would
private.
like to help if you want. I said, how can you help? Well, we happen to have a plane. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, you have been, and he doesn't mean me, although I have been good. He means our country has defended them, has done great things for them. They might not
a
be
huge
there.
base.
Look,
Yeah.
right next to Iran, and he is right next to. He's not like an hour away. Like I flew an hour to one, I flew an hour to here, but that one you don't have to fly. All you have to do is walk right across the border if you want to. I mean, it's literally touching, right? Right next to it. And he said, your country has been very good to us. I would love to do something to help with this situation you have with Air Force One. I said, that's nice. What do you suggest? And he suggested this. And I said, you know what? That's very nice. That's very nice. I appreciate it. What would be the price? He said, there is no price. I said, that's nice. Now, this plane's not for me. This goes to the United States Air Force for whoever is president. And at some point, it'll be like Ronald Reagan. It'll be decommissioned. You know, it's 11 years old.
So it stays until it's decommissioned.
Yeah, it'll be decommissioned because they won't want it. Plus, they'll have the other two planes by that time, and there'll be brand new planes, etc. But I just want to say, it was a radical left story that a lot of people, including you.
I asked the Prime Minister about it specifically, and he said, you know, he didn't understand the reaction back home, and you know, he made that clear.
I think he was insulted. Actually, he made a gift to help somebody that has helped them. It was so nice as a gesture, and you know, the people here, to show you how it's crazy, they'd like me to.
I hate to say it, but right, certain people, right, when people are giving you a gift, sometimes just take it. Don't be ungrateful, right? Right? Don't sour the fucking relationship. Just fucking take the.
To pay $1 billion and get 10 fighter jets instead of giving $1 billion when it's not necessary.
Mr. President, if you'll stand by.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
There you go. I think this was the first part, and then the second part was the assassination. We played it out of order. Whoopsies. Yeah, I couldn't tell which way was the order.